Now let's go ahead and look at the elements that we'll need to go ahead and solve these problems. So the first thing we need to talk about is the technical problems in your office and why you'd want to fix them. The second thing is you need to understand why those are specific problems. In other words, we need to make sure that we identify the problems that are common in all the practices. Then we need to understand what causes those problems. And once we've done that, then we can get to specific items. We can't discuss every item today, but we can discuss the most important items that'll get you started on this path to success. So it's not a dozen projects. We're going to talk about 5 keys today. So the question is, let's look at the things that challenge offices every day. Doctors waiting for a room to be turned around, staff members stressed that the doctor's standing there waiting for them to turn the room around, or the doctor's trying to help and messing up the job. Sterilization. The assistant can't be back in the treatment room because the assistant is working sterilization, or the hygienist doesn't have instruments to go ahead and see their next patient. And they are stating that they need longer appointment times because they've got to handle sterilization, which is such a big task. On-time performance, which is a result of those other things. Inventory control. You got to have somebody that is the inventory expert, or else, the day you need that special whatever, either no one knows where it is or they know where it is and it isn't there because it wasn't ordered. Having that be something that your most experienced person needs to deal with is a mistake. Restocking, getting those things to the places they need to be. Need for increasing productivity. So as all these pressures happen, I don't know about you, but my insurance companies are not paying me more to do the dentistry. They're somehow figuring out how to pay us less to do more dentistry in a more expensive environment. And that's not likely to change. Adequate staffing. In many areas, we're competing for staff with high-tech companies. And we have to financially be able to compete. And if I can't add value with these staff members, then how can I economically go ahead and compete in the marketplace? And then the never-ending increasing demands that we have just as dentists to go ahead and produce a better and better product. The reward of producing those better products is everything winds up back at the lab, and I go into dozens and dozens and dozens of offices every year, and the lab tends to wind up as a chaotic mess in many of them if they're succeeding at actually presenting treatment, getting patients to accept the treatment, and then being able to actually do the treatment. And then you wind up with a big pile of patients at the front desk at the end of the day, which, stressing out, or, all the time stressing out folks that are handling phones and trying to get the customer service side of this done, which needs to be seamlessly spa-like. Because our customers, if you think about it, they can elect to come to us. So we need to understand the problem. So if we agree that those things that we just listed are common threads for all of us, we need to go ahead and understand what are the essence, what are the physical manufacturing productivity problems in their essence. And the first one is bottlenecks. We'll talk about specifically what bottlenecks are and how to fit them into categories. The second thing is managing stuff. We call it dental supplies. I mean, it's every business that makes something has some stuff to make the product with, and you need to manage that. Related to that is that the more complex it gets, the slower it gets. So as we add more procedures, I have 4 or 5 precision attachment types that have entered the practice over time, that evolve. Some of them are legacy and some of them are newer procedures. As you add more of those, it doesn't make you more productive, it makes you less productive. And so complexity slows progress, so we need to figure out how to accommodate that. Many offices can't make money on a filling anymore. They have to make money on a high value procedure, and that's wrong. You need to be able to go ahead and have an honest delivery of services no matter what it is, or else you're going to have a conflict of interest in that. So we've got to figure out how to be able to produce anything, anytime, and have it be profitable so that there's a great relationship with the patient. Simultaneously, and in contradiction to those things, which are all production-based, the patient needs sublime comfort. Now, you could go ahead and just treat patients that are immune to all emotional distraction. Everybody's got some of those. Folks that just can open like an alligator and go to sleep in the chair. And as everybody's dream, if all the patients could just be like that, well, half of the patients are totally the opposite of that. And most practices don't even treat them. Well, if you can make the practice sublimely comfortable while you deliver these things, because you're not rushing around, so the staff is calm, so that everything's where it belongs, so that it's not spread all over the room, so it's psychically uncomfortable, then suddenly you could treat a much larger portion of that population too. And that's a population base that's dying to find practices and very rewarding patients. Half of my practice is spent working with folks that other folks don't want to treat, have no interest in treating, and we treat them happily and easily because we've been able to deliver that. We'll show you that today. And last is ergonomics. You can't have all of this happening and at the end of the day, you're dragging home like a rag doll. If you and your staff are having this come out of your hide to go ahead and make this happen, that's not a fair exchange of value. For no amount of time or money is that acceptable. This is not an ergonomics lecture today. I'd love to come back and talk specifically about ergonomics, but I will dwell on one little piece of this that if you take home and can focus on, it will start you in the journey to think forward about what you might change over time. And that's this simple principle. Bottlenecks are a constriction in a process. So every process has a bottleneck. Every process has something that will slow the rest of the process down. And if you can understand where a bottleneck is and break that open, instantaneously you create a new level of production. Now, I do want to mention to you that when you break open a bottleneck, you will, by definition, create another bottleneck. And so the magic is not to be bothered by that. The magic is to be thrilled that you broke this one open, discover the next one, and then go ahead and pry that one open. So many times, simple changes can go ahead and result in tremendous increases in productivity without making anybody work any harder than they are now. In fact, they'll be working a lot less hard. So, question is here. Who's making how much money because this is the process of checkout in this office? So, is any patient numb and drooling standing in this line waiting to make a new appointment and pay happier because at the end of their appointment, when they perceive they're done, that they have to stand here and wait and drool and worry whether their makeup is all messed up? Second area of bottlenecking is sterilization. I guess this is a dual sterilization and sandwich soup heating location or something. It doesn't look like it's an efficient flow for getting instruments processed and reused in the practice. This one works a little bit faster, I can see, because we've got Mountain Dew involved in the process. So at least we'll be speeding it up a little bit. But this is not an efficient way to sterilize anything. It's not a reliable way to sterilize anything. So treating this seriously, dentists, if you think about dental school, we just handed over our instruments and they magically came back, hopefully sterile. We had no involvement in the process. So as a result, we have no real knowledge about what a highly productive facility would be. And then the treatment room. So I hear every year, dental assistants, when I'm out meeting with doctors, tell me that they just don't make dental assistants like they used to. So I'll hear a senior dental assistant say, well, you know, we hired these new people and they just can't figure out how to go ahead and make this work. Well, I couldn't figure out how to make this office work. There's no chance that I could figure out, could you find me, name it? The answer is no, I couldn't. This is too complex a system. And so as a result, it's an expert system in theory, as long as you have experts running it. In sports, what you'll find, and it's criticized, that they'll dumb down a system for a player. It's actually a good idea. Because the simpler you can make the system, two things happen. One, you have much greater flexibility in who you get to hire. But there's a second part. Simplicity and quality tend to run together. And dentists don't think that way. Dentists think that they can add more complexity to go ahead and make something better. It's not the way to make it happen. And how long is it going to take to turn this treatment room around? So you just got done with this procedure, and all of a sudden, you've got to go ahead and you've got another patient waiting to get in here. You might as well burn this room as try to go ahead and restock it, disinfect everything, get it back to where it was to go ahead and reset it. It's just not going to happen in a reasonable time frame. So if this is the game plan, then it's a bad plan, and it's a plan that's guaranteed to be non-productive. Besides the fact that half of the people working in that room can't reach the stuff, and nobody can reach this from the direct workplace positioning. So the goal in dealing with bottlenecks is to have flexible production, to not target production to rooms, don't assign systems to rooms, speed supplies to the areas that are needed, have as much cross-training as possible so that assistants and hygienists can both go ahead and get rooms set up and broken down for each other. Okay, and then we even have clerical staff that will successfully turn a room around. So anybody can turn a room around. Ultimately though, you're going to increase your capacity, you're going to increase your flow, you're going to increase productivity per hour. For example, my productivity per hour is 3 to 4 times the national average in the US. And I'm lazy, I don't run. I consider it bad for your health. But ultimately, you're going to get to some point with that success where you need to add capacity beyond that to go ahead and not have that be your bottleneck. So right now, the good news is your treatment rooms, your office flow has bottlenecks right now. You can fix them now with the existing space you have. But if you're doing the right thing, and you have 50 new patients a month, and those folks love you, they're supposed to come back for hygiene. And if they come back for hygiene, you just added 40 hygiene hours or so a month, 6 months from now. And so if you do that math, most offices are running a kind of catch and release program. They're not really like thrilling patients and having them all return, which is what any business is supposed to do. On to managing stuff. It's not how much stuff you have. It's where you have it. You've got to have a clear, visually inspectable system. You need to be able to see what you have. If you put it in places where you can't see it, the odds that you're going to be able to inspect it, know that it's where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, diminish to zero. A significant amount of this lecture will be spent on this simple subject. Complexity, as I said, slows progress. And so because dentists are engineers by nature, we tend to make things more complicated. We're a problem in this. We'll go to a lecture, we'll hear about something new, and we'll get excited about the new thing or the new product, but we won't step back and say, okay, how does that affect what we have now? How do we merge those? How do we test those? I can't talk about the details of how we do that in moving forward with 5 doctors in a practice, but you need to go ahead and have a system to do that. More steps, if you think about it, in any process is more opportunity for failure. So again, the more complicated you make it, the more likely something's going to break. Any action that therefore reduces complexity, reduces the step count or the number of handoffs within the office will improve speed, profitability, and quality all at once. But that's a change of your thinking. It took me a good while as an engineer type person to go ahead and adopt that and understand that. So again, any action that reduces complexity, step count, or number of handoffs within an office will improve the speed, profitability, and quality. Please take that home. And then, as we mentioned, patients need comfort and control. A relaxed patient, if you think about it, is much easier to go ahead and treat. And whether they come in as just a patient that doesn't care about dentistry, just come in, open, and fall asleep, or whether you need to go ahead and create an environment that allows them emotionally relax, or whether you need to be able to sedate them, in anything we can do to make that happen makes this better. And then again, ergonomics, it's really two things. We think about ergonomics like belly bars at the Home Depot. Ergonomics is really about two things. It's the biomechanics, which is things like that, posture, positioning, but it's also organization for performance. So athletes and sports trainers think about ergonomics both on the biomechanical side and on the organizational side. Okay. Again, we can't talk about this today. We don't have time to talk about that, but I've got to say this one thing. You can't use what you can't reach. So if there's one thing you take home that should be applied to every step that you go through tomorrow to go measure how am I doing in practice, just apply this yardstick. Can I reach it? Can I do what I need to do within the range of motion of me? I'm 6 feet tall. My range of motion is 6 feet. Okay, that's it. Okay, anything out of that range of motion is a go and get in a warehouse. So if you think by definition, if it's out of that range, it's in a warehouse, and you're in the warehousing business, not in the work business.